What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Logistical Styles coming at you with another video, and today we're doing something a little different. This is like um, a list video. This is going to be a list of some things, and I was trying to come up with a couple of topics on what I could talk about. And as I go through my Facebook feeds, I see some things, and it kind of pointed out, or something kind of stuck out to me, and that is the fact that I don't actually do a lot of things that a lot of DJs do. I go against the grain, I think, on a lot of different things. And I thought that would be a really good topic. And I've come up with about 10 different things that I don't do or I do differently than most DJs, at least what DJs say on online that they do. And kind of give you an insight as to why I do or don't do these things. So it's kind of like a top 10 list. Hopefully this won't be too long of a video, but let's just jump right into it. Thing number one, um, using a helper. I rarely use a helper when I'm DJing, and that's kind of a controversial take, I think, for some people because they swear that I see some DJs, especially multi-op DJs or DJs that or maybe full time. They feel like you must always have a helper whenever possible, and in theory, it sounds like a great thing. But I can tell you, in the past, let's say 20 years, maybe I'll say 15, maybe the past 15 years, I can count on one hand the number of times I've used a helper. And while it has been helpful, no pun intended, it did make things easier. It also did come with some challenges. And to put a little of a disclaimer, I know people hate when other DJs do this, but I've been DJing for 30 years, over 30 years. Meaning I've been doing paid gigs over 30 years, and some of my first events were actually weddings. So I've done weddings every year over the past 30 years, and I've gone from part-time to full-time, and now I'm back to being part-time. And I may end up being just a hobbyist DJ, but I have a long history of doing events, and that's part of the reason why I don't use a helper a lot, is because I know my workflow, I know my equipment, I know what needs to be done. And honestly, I've learned over the past years that you are the most invested person in your event being successful. You can hire a helper, but I've had people do no call, no show. I've had people show up late, not properly dressed, not understanding or not knowing what needs to be done. And some of it is like basic stuff, like wrapping cords or just setting up speakers or lights and microphones, stuff like that. I'm sure there are great helpers out there, and I know some DJs that have dedicated assistants for all their gigs, and it works out really great. But because I'm a subcontractor, and I think a lot of the things on this list might come down to the fact of me being a subcontractor. Because I'm a subcontractor, I am being hired to come and perform this event, execute the event, and they don't plan for helpers unless it's a big production where maybe we're doing Dancing on the Clouds or Cold Sparks, in addition to multiple setups. Then they will build it into the price for the customer that, hey, we're going to be hiring and bringing an assistant along. A good example of that would be like for a photo booth attendant. Sometimes I book out DJ services, and then I have to bring along a photo booth attendant. Oftentimes that is like my wife, or maybe my kids have come and helped me do events before. But yeah, it's just not something I do, and I wish I could, because the times that I have had help that did know what they were doing and were effective, it made the job so much easier. But it's just not something that I can do for every gig, and it's something that I go against the grain with. So that's the first item on my list. Helpers. I'm sure some of you do. Let me know in the comments how you feel about helpers, or if you don't use them, just let me know. Next up is something that I hear a lot of DJs talk about that do weddings, and that is they line up the bridal party for the entrance and to the wedding reception. I never do that. Absolutely never ever do that. I don't I'm a subcontractor. I come in and I could keep, I don't want to keep saying that, but I come in and I do the job that I was requested to do, and that is to DJ and provide music. They may give me a playlist, they may give me instructions, and I will follow those to a T and make it happen. But I don't try to be the wedding coordinator. I don't try to be the wedding planner, or I don't try to tell all the other vendors what's how things are going to happen. You know, I try to be a team member and not the quarterback, if you will. And I know this is probably ruffling some feathers right now for some DJs because they feel like they are the coordinator of the event because, you know, they're controlling the music and things don't happen without the music, blah, 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 whatever. But no, if there is a wedding coordinator or wedding planner there, I let them be the quarterback for the game. You know, I let them call the shots, and I'm there as support. I work well with photographers and other vendors and the caterers, etc. And we communicate when needed to make sure that things can happen. But generally speaking, I'm not going out lining up the bridal party and getting them in line so we can, you know, have the introduction. One main reason why I don't do that, especially now, is because the latest trend over the past maybe year or two, including this year, has been that the bridal party just comes in as a group. You just announce the bridal party, they come in, and then you announce Mr. and Mrs. So and so. So there's no need for me to do it. But even when there was the time when I was announcing the individual names or the couples of the bridal party that were coming in, I would have the coordinator give me the order that they were being lined up in. Or if I was giving information beforehand, I would give them the printout of what I have listed as to how they come and then let the coordinator line them up. I don't really have time, especially if I'm, you know, working on keeping the music going and maybe there's a change in the room. Sometimes they flip a room from a ceremony to a reception and I need to be available for that. So I don't line up the bridal parties on the entrance. Thing number three that I do or I don't do. I don't do often. I will say that. I don't do often, and that is site visits and I'll go ahead and add this along wedding rehearsals. I don't do site visits or wedding rehearsals, generally speaking. Have I done them? Yes. Have they been helpful? Yes. Now, what I do is I go online and I Google the address or the venue to see what the venue is like, and that is always helpful because I get a idea of what the surrounding area is like, what the travel to the location will be like, and maybe what the room looks like. But then sometimes a venue may have several different rooms available, and your client may have only purchased, you know, the use of half those rooms or whatever. But I do reconnaissance. I do try to find out what I'm getting myself into. But because of the weddings that I've gotten, especially this summer, this wedding season, every wedding was about an hour and a half, sometimes up to 3 hours away. So there's no way I'm driving 3 hours or hour and a half to go look at a room. First of all, you have to schedule that. And then I'm not driving that far out to go look at the room. And then also being part of the rehearsal, that I would do that if there was an extra charge involved. Now, one time I did do that, a rehearsal, a site visit and a rehearsal was for my niece's wedding. And that was held here in the city of Atlanta. So there wasn't a far drive. I was able to go meet them, take a look at the room, and they also did the rehearsal right then and there. So that was a real easy one. But generally speaking, no, I don't do site visits or rehearsals. Are they helpful? Yes. But are they always practical? No, because time and distance, you know, you gotta account for that one way or the other. Next thing on the list is might be a little controversial, and that is mixing during cocktail hour. If possible, and if I had the opportunity, and probably a helper would give me that opportunity, but I don't mix during cocktail hour. A lot of times, most of the times, I'm doing a pre-mix. I will speak to the client, ask them what they want to hear, what type of music. Sometimes they want to hear just, you know, like lately, the whole Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte music. That type of music has been real popular. So when they tell me that, they want to hear that for cocktail hour, I got several premixes of that. There's no reason for me to be trying to mix, orchestra music. It doesn't make sense. Um, Other times I do get requests that they want something upbeat and they want upbeat pop contemporary music, and I have that available as a premix because as a solo operator, I'm doing a lot of things during cocktail hour. I'm breaking down the ceremony system and getting that packed back into the car, or at least bringing it into where I am. A lot of times the ceremony happens out in a field somewhere, and then everybody moves into the cocktail hour location, and I've got to break down stuff. But you don't want to have dead air, so I have a premix that's playing, the type of music that's been requested. And sometimes they give me specific playlists. A lot of times, really. Um, Now in this day and age, these clients will just forward you a playlist with 6 hours of music for a 3 hour event, and when they give you that much music, I know that this is what they want to hear. So they're not giving me a lot of free reign to, kind of feel the crowd out or whatever. But I do take the time during the cocktail hour to see how people are reacting to the music and to see who, might be somebody I need to, motivate to get dancing. They might be the person to set things off on a dance floor, so you can kind of pick up cues on people. But at the same time, I still have stuff to do, like break down equipment, move equipment, get stuff ready for the reception grand entrance. So, yeah, I'm not always mixing my cocktail hour music. Most generally, I am playing a pre recorded cocktail hour mix. And a lot of times, a cocktail hour is just a Mackie Go Thump set up on a speaker pole with a microphone available hooked up to it, a Phoenix Pro, and that allows me to make any announcements or to tell people it's time to go into the big room or whatever. But I don't have time to mix during cocktail hour. Next thing that I do differently than other DJs is using streaming platforms. And this is actually the opposite. I actually do use streaming platforms when available. Now, I definitely know you have to have all your music with you, whenever possible, but sometimes when you have to take requests, I have no problem logging into Tidal or Apple Music to, hit those requests. A lot of DJs, I've seen some that just swear it off. They will never, ever use a streaming platform because maybe they don't really know how the system works. They don't understand how to use it. But sometimes I think a lot of DJs don't use certain things because of ignorance. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm thinking that they don't understand all the intricacies of using certain technology. So they just avoid it at all costs. But not me. I will use Apple Music and Tidal. I may even check out Beatport. I heard they got a pretty good selection. I actually played around with Virtual DJ the other day, and the fact that they have offline storage for Tidal is great. I wish I would have thought about that at my last wedding, where I was trying to play music off the Tidal app on my iPad, which was run into the aux input on my controller. I could have just, ran Virtual DJ for that event and would have had no problem. I try to keep a copy of all the major software, DJ software on my laptop, so I should have, thought about using that because, you know, um, it's there. It's a tool. You might as well use it. Speaking of another tool that I use that some DJs hate, and this is the next item on the list, is using sync. I do use sync. I use it a lot when especially when I'm using a controller. If I'm using my turntables, I don't use sync at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. Um, I just, use the hardware right there. But on a controller, everything is internal basically, and the controller is just, some external controls with buttons and knobs and stuff. So I have no problem hitting that sync button to, cut down on me having to try to manually match the pitch. Because once you get the pitch matched, there's still other stuff you have to do. You have to start the song on time with the right timing. You have to know your music. There's other stuff. So it's not like the computer's doing the work for me. So I have no problem using sync. I was against it when it first came out many, many years ago, but then I finally started to look at it and realize there's different levels of sync. And sometimes we even inadvertently use sync. And like if you use instant doubles, that is a kind of a form of sync. You syncing those two decks up with the same BPM and putting it in the same position, that's some kind of a sync. So once you start realizing that you actually are using some of these technologies in different methods, in different ways, that's when I think you start to become a little bit more open to digging deeper into that technology and figuring out how to actually use it to your best. To not the best of your ability, but to make things easier for you. So yeah, using sync, I do it. Streaming music, I do it. I also keep my music library on my computer, so I'm never going to get caught with my pants down because I don't have a good internet connection. Next thing I don't do, I don't heavily advertise. Why don't I heavily advertise my services? Well, I have a full-time job, so I can't DJ full-time. If I did, heavily advertise and I did get all these gigs booked, I would be, really burning the midnight oil and, just burning myself out. So I take what comes along my way when I get referrals. I get most of my work from referrals. I book some stuff. The advertising that I do would be considered like using Gig Salad. I have a profile set up on there. I could probably set up profiles on some other platforms like Thumbtack, but I don't really want to do that. I heard it's not, you don't get quality leads from that. At least with Gig Salad, I get quality leads. So I advertise there. I do have a website. I do have my social media, which is not even that deep. I have Instagram and Facebook. And that's how I advertise. And it works out for me. The rest of the way I advertise is just by doing a good job and making those posts. And then other DJs that have multi-op businesses, they reach out to me to fill in dates. So right now I work off of referrals from 5 different DJs or 5 different companies send me referrals for events throughout the year. And that's enough combined with my Gig Salad to keep me busy making, money DJing. I don't use it as my primary income, so I don't have to be booked every weekend. I don't have to be working 2 gigs every weekend. I can take time off. Like right now, I'm moving into the slow end of my year. After the holiday parties are done, I don't expect to have many gigs January, February, and March. I might do 1 or 2 each month. But I'm okay with that because, I have another form of income. So that is why I don't heavily advertise, because I can't handle the volume that would possibly come. And then it's also an expense. I mean, I'm already spending money for my website, hosting it, and I just don't want to put too much money into it. If you're a career DJ or a full-time DJ, you should definitely heavily advertise. But if you're just like taking it easy like me, taking what you can, then, it's up to you. We're getting close to the end of the list. So the last 2 things. I don't pay for a record pool, and I buy my songs when I need them. Now that's one line item. So paying for a record pool, I don't do that anymore. I used to. Maybe every once in a while I may join a record pool that allows you to download as much as possible. I might do a 1-month subscription and go ahead and raid their library, their catalog, and get as much as I can. But for the most part, everything else I do, I buy my music. I buy a lot of music. It might be easier for me to join a record pool, or cheaper for me to join a record pool, but I get to the point where, these record pools, a lot of the newer music, I just don't get. It's disposable to me. So I can either stream it or I'll buy it if I need it, So my iTunes receipts from the iTunes store, every month I'm spending a good amount of money, about the amount of money I would pay for a record pool. But in this case, I'm getting the music I actually need and the music I want versus just access to a bunch of garbage that I won't use. And like I say, every once in a while, I will join a record pool and, just get caught up on some stuff, maybe trying to fill in some holes. But with a lot of these streaming apps, especially the ones that have the offline play ability, um, it's really cutting back on the amount of music I'm buying, but I do definitely buy music, which is why I don't really share my hard drive with other people. Maybe if you're a very, very close friend and you've had catastrophe with your music and you've got events coming up, I'm definitely going to look out for my people and, get them what they need to get their events done. But, I see people that are selling hard drives. I would never sell a hard drive full of music because I've paid for the majority of that music. And it may be, I may be an outlier on that. But yeah, I spend money on my music. So when I spend that $1.29 in the Apple iTunes store, I'm buying it for myself to use for myself. I'm not buying it with the intention of giving copies away for other folks. You know what I'm saying? I just don't do it like that. Um, I know a lot of DJs will freely share a hard drive. That ain't me. So let's get down to the last item on this list is I do use iTunes for my music library management. I know a lot of people have opinions about it, and some of it's based on facts, some of it's based on just how they feel or what they heard, and they're just repeating what they heard. But I have taken the time to learn how iTunes is working with my DJ programs. I know there are settings that you can go to in iTunes that tell it how to manage things, and um, I like the workflow. I like to be able to open up any of my DJ programs, whether it's Serato, whether it's DJ Pro, whether it's Virtual DJ. I can open it up and my iTunes playlists are right there as I created them. So I don't have to worry about importing crates and moving Serato crate into DJ Pro versus moving it into um, Virtual DJ. You know what I'm saying? I just use my iTunes to organize my music. Sometimes I use smart playlists if I want to grab a whole genre or a whole um, catalog from a particular artist and put it in a playlist. It's easy for me to do it that way. I've heard people say that iTunes will replace your music and swap it out. There are things that you can turn off in iTunes to stop it from doing that. There are some things you should not sign up for iTunes. I mean, they are going to try to push some of their, features, but I just use basic iTunes. Like when I first got into managing my digital library, it was because my job at the time, they gave everybody iPod Nanos. And in order to put music on the iPod Nano, you had to, have iTunes on your computer. And this was before I was even a Mac user. I was still a PC user, and I had to download iTunes in order to get music onto the iPod. And shortly thereafter, that maybe 2-3 years later, I switched over to started using Serato. And Serato has that checkbox in the settings that allows you to show your iTunes library. So it made things very, very easy. And then when I started playing with the other programs, they all did the same thing. Even when I experimented with Tractor, I was a Tractor DJ user for about a year. Um, iTunes made it easy. When I tried Rekordbox, iTunes made it easy. And even now that I'm using DJ Pro as my main DJ software, I, check that box and I coordinate my playlist in iTunes. And that makes it with DJ Pro, it's even easier for me because I keep my MacBook library the same as my iPad library. So if I go and make changes to the playlist on my MacBook, that's where I do my central music management. All I gotta do is hook my iPad up to it, let it sync, and the playlist will be right there where I created them. So that makes things easier for me. Now, some of you have different setups, especially if you're using your music on an external hard drive, stuff like that. That may cause issues and may require you to do things a little bit differently. And then, I just thought of that as I said it. This is a bonus item to end up this list is using an external hard drive. I don't use external hard drives. All my music is stored on my laptop because I think I know it makes things easier. And especially when you're doing your backup, I just back up one drive. And I do have Time Machine hard drives where I keep different backups up. So I do have external hard drives, but they're only for backups and storage for like videos and music and stuff like that. So I always keep a backup, but I don't use an external hard drive because it's easier for me to transfer to a new computer that way. It's easier for me to manage my library, especially with Algorithm DJ Pro. It works so much better when you have all the music on your main drive. When you have an external drive, there are some difficulties, especially as far as seeing your Serato crates. I think eventually they're going to fix that in some updates, but currently that's the way it is. Another reason for me to use my internal drive instead of my external, you get quicker access to the files. If you have to go through a USB port and a cable to the external drive, which may or may not be a solid state, some people are still using spinning drives, that's just slowing the process down. If the data is already internally stored on the computer's hard drive, the read-write access is it's faster. So that's how I am. That's the things I do. I go against the grain. A lot of you probably have disagreed with everything single thing I've said in this video, but that's that's the beauty of freedom of choice. You can choose to do what works for you. So if you feel like having a helper is the only way to go, more power to you. For those of us like me that we just rock out solo, more power to us. But anyway, that's today's video. I'm going to do another video. I got another list that I want to do, and that's kind of a list of just advice that I would give to newer DJs. So I'm going to probably record that today or tomorrow as well and get this content coming out now that I've got downtime and I'm not always prepping for a wedding. I have time to make more videos. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Don't forget, if you are new here, and you like what you're seeing, hit that like button, subscribe, and feel free to, let me know in the comments what you think about it. Are you doing what I'm doing? Are you doing something differently, and why? So anyway, I'm about to sign out, and until next time, this is your boy, Logistical Styles, and I am out.